to the Web3 Prof podcast.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. I'm here with Medi Naseri, who is the CEO and founder of Lod Technologies. Medi, thanks for being with me here today.
Thanks, Jared. Thanks for having me.
So, Medi, let's jump right into it. How did you get into crypto? Tell us your origin story.
Sure. So, Medi Naseri here. I'm the CEO and founder of Lod Technologies, as Jared said. I've been interested in Bitcoin since 2013. And I wanted to buy Bitcoin, invest in Bitcoin. I had no idea how could I do it. I was just following the news, seeing the pump and dump, Bitcoin going to $1,000, dropping down back to $100. But it was 2014. That was a grad student at Simon Fraser University here in Vancouver. And I noticed there is a machine installed in the library. Bookstore. And I got curious, hey, what's going on? What is this machine? And I noticed it's a Bitcoin ATM. And that was the moment, hey, I wanted to buy Bitcoin for this very long time, for past couple of years. Now this is the machine. I could probably start buying Bitcoin. And started trying depositing $50, I don't know, $100 into that machine, buying Bitcoin. I got interested. Hey, this is cool. I had $200-300 worth of Bitcoin in my wallet, walking around. And I went on a trip. That was 2015, I believe. I went on a trip to Nicaragua. And I was staying at a hostel on Ometepe Island, in the middle of the country. And at that hostel, I noticed there was a sign, Bitcoin is accepted here. I was, okay, I have Bitcoin and they accept it. So, and the price of Bitcoin was probably $200 at the time. And I asked them, hey, do you actually accept Bitcoin? They said, we have the sign, but we've never done it. Do you want to be the first person? I said, sure, let's do it. And they sent me a wallet address. They actually wrote the address on the paper and I typed it in. There was no QR code. I typed the address in. I paid for that hostel, but that was kind of a historic moment for me. I took a selfie. Hey, this is part of history. I actually paid with this technology in the most unlikely place on Earth, on a volcanic island in the middle of Latin America.
Amazing.
This is the future. I want to do something about it. So when I came back from that trip, I started getting more involved. I started mining, in my office at SFU. Learning more about blockchain, crypto, did a lot of shitcoin trading in 2017, and then became a Bitcoin maxi after that. So I had quite a journey until 2019 when I started ideating about founding this company. The name of the company at the beginning was Lincoin Technologies, and we were very much focused on offering Bitcoin mining pool services. But as the time passed, we started to build more and more to serve that industry as a whole. Amazing.
That's such a cool story. I've been to Ometepe, and it is a kind of a remarkable little place, and that's pretty cool that you were able to find a place. It's so random, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so tell us about Lod Technologies. What are some of the services you offer? And then let's try to get an understanding of Bitcoin mining. What is it? And also, what are mining pools?
Sure. When we launched this company in 2021, it was the time that China had banned Bitcoin mining, for the 10th time, right? They ban it every year, but that was seriously banning Bitcoin mining. So a lot of Bitcoin miners were migrating from Asia to North America, and it was a very quickly growing industry. So we started a Bitcoin mining pool service in order to serve that growing demand. We kept building that idea and that product for over a year, and we actually onboarded hundreds of users to the platform. But after about a year, we noticed that it is not a good enough business. You can't differentiate enough in this industry if you're running a Bitcoin mining pool. So we started building on top of two new ideas. One was operations management software for large-scale Bitcoin miners who run tens of thousands of machines, and also building a software for energy strategy, which was becoming more and more of an important need for Bitcoin miners. What is energy strategy? Let me explain more. If you are, as a consumer, you receive your electricity bill on a monthly basis. They tell you this is how much you consumed, this is the price of electricity, and here's your bill. But in reality, like in most parts of North America, the price of electricity changes every 5 minutes. So it's just like as liquid as stock market, but that's a 24/7 market. So if you are using electricity and converting that to a product and you have no other operational expenditure or no other major operational expenditure other than electricity, then your cost management is your most important strategy.
Interesting.
We built that software for Bitcoin miners to help them monitor the market and adjust the clock speed of their machines based on real-time price of energy.
So that basically means that if, at 6 p.m., everyone's home from work and they're running their air conditioners, there's peak load, that means energy is going to be more expensive at that time. So you would dial back potentially your Bitcoin miners so that you're not spending so much money on energy. And then at 2 a.m., you would maybe turn them back on full power. Am I understanding this correct?
Yes. But it's a lot more unpredictable.
Okay.
And a lot more dynamic. After a while, the patterns become static. However, the let's say amplitude of peaks changes based on time of the day, based on month of the year, based on weather events, right? So that's a very unpredictable market. However, what we do for them is that we help them make decisions in matter of seconds based on the price of energy at that exact moment. So for example, right now, Texas is a big place for this industry. And they have a lot of renewable energy, wind and solar. So during sunrise and sunset, we see those peaks happen because solar generation is either coming in or going out. So we see huge spikes in prices. And the electricity grid is under pressure. So we help Bitcoin miners avoid those peaks when those peaks are big enough.
Interesting.
However, that's just layer one. There is multiple layers to energy strategy. Price strategy is one. Supporting the grid at the times of the peak demand is number two. For example, in summertime, the peak does not necessarily happen at sunset. It actually happens at the hottest time of the day when people are just turning up their ACs.
Yes.
So we help them identify the peaks and avoid the peak demand of the grid, not necessarily the peak price. And on the third layer, we help them become parts of the grid programs and get paid by turning off their machines because they're supporting the grid and enabling the grid keep the grid stable, keep the frequency of the grid stable.
Wow. Okay. I had no idea that energy prices varied through the day in most jurisdictions. Is BC one of the only places where it's stable?
There is only 2 places across North America, and BC is one of them.
What is the other one?
I believe that's Newfoundland.
Newfoundland, okay.
I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's
interesting.
The 2.
Okay. So can you explain to us what is Bitcoin mining? What's happening here?
Sure. So probably in order to explain that, I gotta start from something that all of us do on a daily basis, transferring money from one party to another, right? So you log into your banking system and you add the other party's account number or email address or phone number and send them the money. On Bitcoin blockchain, you are doing the same thing. However, you are removing that third party, which is a bank. So you log into your wallet, insert the address of the other party, and create a transaction. And you broadcast that transaction to the network. Network has a wait list of transactions. They call it mempool. So you upload that transaction to the mempool, put it on the wait list, and set a fee on it. Depending on how big of a fee you set, you'll get priority in that competition. On the other side, there is a group of people called Bitcoin miners. They are monitoring this mempool every second to see what are the new transactions, and they are handpicking the ones that are paying more than anybody else, and try to create a candidate block. Let's imagine we have a block that we can only insert up to 2,000 transactions in there, more or less, right? Mm-hmm. So they're handpicking the transaction that they're paying more than anybody else and create a candidate block and try to push that block to the network. One requirement for pushing that block to the network is guessing a number. And that number guessing happens by Bitcoin mining machines. They are guessing trillions of numbers every second in order to guess the right number that creates a hash that fulfills the network requirements, the network difficulty requirements. I mean, I don't want to go very deep.
Yeah, no, this is great. This is good.
But Bitcoin mining is the business of guessing the right number. And you are competing with thousands of other miners. And you're guessing trillions of numbers every second.
Wow. And so how many miners, do we know how many miners are out there?
That's technically not possible. There are estimates. That's a permissionless network.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't necessarily say, I know how many people are actually guessing number, because that's a standalone. Anyone can do it in their garage, right?
Right.
But because the Bitcoin mining is evolving and most people are becoming part of mining pools, and mining pools publish their stats and numbers, we are able to estimate what's going on and how many entities or how many people or how many machines are actually involved in the process.
Yeah. And so do we think there's hundreds of thousands or a million, or?
So based on the difficulty and block rate of the network, we can guess that there are around 800 exahash worth of mining happening out there.
Okay.
So that 800 exahash translates to around 4 million S21 mining devices.
Okay.
So now you can just go as deep as you want. Like,
right.
How many people actually run those 4 million machines?
Sure.
So,
Okay. All right. So why do mining pools exist?
okay. Let's go back to 2010, right? There was a couple people in the entire world mining Bitcoin, and they were competing with each other to find a block. As a matter of fact, there are only 144 Bitcoin blocks per day. Mm-hmm. So you are competing with everybody else to find those 144 blocks. When you are two people and you have the same amount of computing power, you have 50-50 chance to win. If that number goes up, your chance goes down, down, down. As the Bitcoin mining became less profitable and became more like a business, people could not tolerate the variation. Sometimes if you did not have a big enough hash rate and compute power, you had to wait days or weeks or months until you could actually mine a block.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody said, hey, what if we join or create a consortium and join a group where we kind of combine our effort in finding a block and then distribute the reward among ourselves. So that's how Bitcoin mining pools started. So let's say tens of Bitcoin miners, they joined their compute power in order to find a block. Whenever they found a block, let's say whenever they found that like 3.125 worth of Bitcoin of block reward, they distributed that among themselves based on their contribution to the pool.
Yeah.
So that's how the mining pool industry has started.
I mean, we have other examples of this type of thing in society, like rental pools or something that we see. So you might buy a unit in a development to rent out,
Yep.
and if your unit goes vacant, it doesn't really matter because everyone in that rental pool is sharing the revenue equally, or maybe by square footage or by number of bedrooms in which you own. It mitigates the risk that you can tolerate or have to tolerate because you're going to kind of get an equal share relative to your contribution. Am I understanding this right?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And so why did you think it was a good business for you to get into, and how do you generate revenue as a owner of a pool?
In 2017, 18, mining cryptocurrencies was very profitable. And I was looking for an idea that, hey, how could we become part of it? I mean, I don't have enough money to buy all those like computers and machines, but I could build a solution where people could come together, like combine their effort and make money so I can, and then I can like grab a commission.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I thought this could be a good idea to get into. However, it was not a great idea, by the way. Running a mining pool is one of the toughest things that you could do.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, it's not really a lucrative business model.
Okay.
That's a very tough business. So that was my story, and that's how I like entered this market. That created like the baseline, the foundation for who we are today as a company, and we are still maintaining that mining pool. We now serve around like 2 exahash almost worth of hash rate. That's around 0.25% of the entire network.
Okay. And so how many miners is that? That would be like 8,000 miner, or?
That translates to around 20,000 machines.
20,000 machines.
Yes.
Okay.
However, through other services that we offer, we currently like manage around 3% of the network hash rate.
Oh, wow.
So through like other means and other products that we have
Right.
in the market.
And so running this company that you have and managing a fairly substantial load of the network, what are the disadvantages of being in a pool? I think the advantages are pretty clear. You know, if I don't win a block, but somebody else in the pool does, I get a piece of that pie. Are there disadvantages to being part of a pool?
Okay, I'm an engineer and I can speak in terms of numbers. When you are part of a mining pool, you're paying a pool fee. And that pool fee used to be pretty big. Let's say at the beginning, that was, I don't know, a few percent, 3-4%. Now you can get like very, very competitive fees from pools as low as 0.1%.
Okay.
Which means it does not necessarily make sense to mine in solo mode anymore from financial perspective. I mean, sometimes we say, hey, I want to decentralize the network. I want to just do solo mining. Sure. You are not making a financial decision here.
Mm-hmm.
You're making a decision based on what you want to do with the network, and you want to, for sure, decentralization is great. But when you are running a business, you have your own risk tolerance. So becoming part of a mining pool, given the fact that the fee is pretty low, is a no-brainer.
Okay. And can I have a small miner in the garage of my house and join your mining pool, or is this really for corporations?
Sure. No, I mean, most mining pools out there, including ours, Lincoin Pool, is a permissionless platform that anyone could just, with a username and password, just join the platform, start mining, and start earning Bitcoin.
Great. So can you explain how the rewards are distributed? I think you said it's kind of like by hash rate, how much hash rate you contribute to the network. Is that right?
So the payment scheme has evolved quite significantly in the past 10, 12 years.
Mm.
At the beginning, the payment method was called proportional. Let's say whenever they mined a block, based on how much contribution anyone had, they would have just distribute the reward. And then they moved to a more advanced algorithm called PPLNS, or pay per last n number of shares. So they had this moving window of like to measure contribution. In that method, the mining pool, whenever they mined a block, the mining pool would just look back to the past, let's say, eight periods, or let's say eight windows of mining a block for that specific pool, to see how much contribution each user had, and then distribute the reward based on the contribution. And they would share whatever they mined. Let's say if they mined a block back in 2014, probably the reward at the time was like 12.5 Bitcoin or 25 Bitcoin. And they would have just distribute that block reward plus any transaction fees that the mining pool could earn from the transaction that they were putting in the block. After that, it was a very risky, PPLNS was a very risky business model for miners.
Okay.
So a new algorithm was introduced called PPS, pay per share. In that algorithm, the mining pool would start like taking the risk, saying that, hey, I don't care how much Bitcoin blocks we actually mine. I'm going to pay you based on mathematics and based on the probability of you personally winning a block.
Oh, wow.
And you can get paid on a daily basis, no matter how many blocks we actually mine. So that's an insurance kind of product. The problem with PPS algorithm was that it did not include transaction fees. It was just paying the block rewards. Transaction fees were pretty small at the time, but in 2016-17, transaction fees spiked. So people were asking, hey, where is my transaction fee? I want that portion of reward as well. So a new algorithm came out, PPS Plus. In PPS Plus, they had the block reward paid out in PPS, but the transaction fees paid out in PPLNS. So a combination of the two.
Okay.
Again, a new algorithm came out, FPPS, which became like probably the most popular even today. In FPPS, the entire risk sits on the mining pool side. So that's a full insurance package for mining revenue. And the pools are paying out block rewards and transaction fees based on mathematics and probability of the miner winning a block. And miners are just getting paid based on whatever hash rate they contribute to the pool. And our mining pool, Lincoin pool, is also an FPPS platform.
Okay, so you're bearing the risk in this situation because, like, what if no miners in your pool win a block this week or whatever? So how frequently would miners in your pool be winning blocks? Is my first question. And how much of the fees that are being paid out to the Bitcoin miners is transactions versus mine Bitcoin?
So just like any other industry, Bitcoin mining pool industry is also very centralized. Just imagine banking.
Mm-hmm.
You are probably, let's say, go banking at your, let's say, community credit union, but in reality that credit union sits on top of a federal credit union, let's say Central One, for instance, and then that Central One sits on one of the top 5 big banks, and then everything is sitting on top of the central bank.
Mm-hmm.
That's more or less the same story in Bitcoin mining. So there are some major pools. I guess there is 5 or 6 major pools, and there are smaller pools who share the hash rate with those bigger pools, and there are miners who use those pools.
Okay.
So it's a business of managing the risk. It's a business of sharing the risk.
Mm-hmm.
So for us, we are sharing our hash rate with a bunch of other larger pools. That's how we manage the risk. However, at the end of the day, we are taking some parts of the risk in this process. In terms of the payouts, like nowadays, like today, the transaction fees are probably less than 1% worth of payouts. So the miners are still relying on block rewards as their main source of revenue.
Okay. And with this centralization within pools,
Mm-hmm.
and being a Bitcoin maxi, like decentralization, from what I understand from the Bitcoin community, which I'm a part of, is like one of the most important feature of Bitcoin. And is there a problem then with the centralization with mining pools, and maybe even comment amongst miners as well, these large corporations that are processing much of the power?
So I'll answer that question from 2 standpoints. From a maxi standpoint first. Do I like decentralization? Yes, I do. Is the Bitcoin network decentralized? No. Is Lightning Network decentralized? No. Is Bitcoin exchanges decentralized? No. So I have a bad news for you as a Bitcoin maxi. What you want isn't out there, and it's probably not going to happen.
Really?
Realistically.
Like it's going to get more centralized?
It's going to get more centralized. It is like any other industry, like tomato industry.
Yeah.
Do you know how centralized is tomato industry? Banking industry. Do you know how centralized is banking industry? Like this is happening everywhere. That's how the economy shapes itself. So you can't fight against it. However, from the other standpoint, to answer the same question, I think there are centralization risks But today, right now, it's not bad. Let's say having 6, 7 major players, I call it decentralized enough. However, I'm saying there is a risk there for sure.
And is it, I guess, it's going to get more and more centralized as time progresses, most likely. Because it's not profitable. It doesn't make any financial sense for me in my home to mine Bitcoin. So it has to become more centralized for financial gain for the companies that are mining.
Probably yes. For example, what we've been seeing in the past couple years is that small scale miners are just going out of business. The only ones who are growing are the very large scale, like institutional miners that are just keeping up with the difficulty of the network and the hash rate going up. So eventually this industry is also moving in that centralization direction.
Okay. Can you explain, you've kind of referenced it a couple times, the difficulty adjustment. Can you, in simple terms, explain what that is and why that matters?
So that's an algorithm built into the code base of Bitcoin in order to keep it healthy. Let's imagine there was no difficulty adjustment. There was 2 of us, you and I, 2010 mining Bitcoin, and we were mining, let's say, out of 144 blocks, 72 blocks would go to you, 72 blocks would go to me. And a new guy would come in. And this guy will start taking his own share. However, the result of that guy coming in, adding 30% more compute power to the network, would have caused the block time of the network to reduce by 30% because we could mine more blocks. Difficulty adjustment is a mechanism in the network that happens every almost 2 weeks, every 2016 blocks, in order to readjust the mining difficulty, the difficulty of the process of mining, to keep the block times at 10 minutes. So that's a mechanism. Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency. That's how they created it. More cryptocurrencies were created after that. They had their own difficulty adjustment mechanism. Some of them just adjusted it every block. But in Bitcoin, that's every 2016 blocks.
So does that mean let's say it's happening every 14 days specifically, does that mean on day 13, that's the that's the easiest time to mine blocks because we have had the most compute power and we've kind of figured out how that 2-week period works?
Not necessarily. So, and it does not always takes 14 days, depending on how much new hash rate was added or removed from the network within that time window. That 14-day could be reduced, let's say, to 10 days or go to 20 days. Let's say, for example, in summertime, peak of summer, because we are helping a lot of miners to curtail, the hash rate of the network drops.
Oh, interesting.
So the block rate actually slows down. Instead of 14 days, that could take, let's say, 18 days in order for difficulty adjustment to become activated. Or, for example, in shoulder months, let's say spring and fall, when there is no grid event, the hash rate is usually growing in those months. So you usually see shorter difficulty adjustment periods, shorter than 14 days. So that's kind of how you could see that weather events affecting Bitcoin network.
When we look at the management of power, how much of Bitcoin mining energy use is the operation of the little computers versus the air conditioning to keep the facility cool?
Very much depends on how the miners are operating. There are 3 major ways to mine Bitcoin. One is air-cooled miners. The other one is immersion-cooled miners, cooling miners through some sort of oil, silicone oil. And the third way is hydro-cooled miners. Depending on how you operate it, you need different cooling systems, and they consume different amounts of power. But what we are seeing, that's between 5 to 10% of power goes to cooling. Okay. And about 90% goes to actual mining process.
Oh, interesting. So, because sometimes I hear people say, well, Canada's a great place to mine Bitcoin because it's cold, and so the northern parts of the country, are helpful in that regard. But I guess if it's only 5 or 10% of the power usage, and if power is not that cheap, it doesn't really make any sense. Am I assessing that correctly?
Yes. I mean, eventually, if you just like look at the numbers, that makes sense. Sure. I mean, if you're mining in a cold area, you need less cooling.
Yeah.
However, the amount of heat produced by Bitcoin machines is probably too much that it doesn't matter whether like the temperature is like 20 degrees or 10 degrees. Because it is the like temperature difference that is important. You have to keep the machines, let's say, running at 40 degrees. There are some effects there, but not huge. I mean, we are seeing miners operating very profitably in Texas, which is considered very hot area. So what I would say, cost of power and geopolitical risks are a lot more important than weather, as far as we're saying.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. And where do we see, or do we know where the miners in the world are primarily mining from? Like what regions do we see? West Texas or Texas you've mentioned. Where else?
I think if you want to just study the network as a whole, you should classify miners to Eastern miners and Western miners.
Okay.
A lot of hash rate is actually coming from East, from Russia, Middle East, probably China, although it is banned, but there is probably a lot of mining going on there. And then there is Western Bitcoin miners who like normally mine in Canada, US, Latin America. So that's kind of how you classify them. The share of like the amount of hash rate is close to 50-50 where this comes from. But eventually we don't have much data. Like the only reliable data that we can get access to is data from publicly traded miners, either in the East or West. So based on that, we can say, okay, this is the amount of hash rate coming from this country or that country. So there are estimates, let's say, for US, there are estimates for Canada, estimates for Latin America.
But that's just based on publicly traded companies. So we really don't know.
We really don't know. We just
And is that a good thing?
Sure, why not? I mean, who cares, right? All we care is the block rate for the network. TikTok next block. It's happening, yes. Sure.
But don't we care, like if all the miners are in Russia or China and that's an adversarial environment and, I don't know, Putin takes over all the mining facilities in Russia or something like that. I don't know. I feel like that seems like that could be harmful to the network.
That definitely is. So decentralization in terms of geographic region, I think we have it. So we have that balance between East, West, North America, Latin America, Asia, whatever. So we care about it and we don't see much risk over there. So we are diverse enough in terms of geopolitical risk.
All right. How often do Bitcoin miners have to replace their little computers?
Oh, I think they're getting a lot more smart these days. They are investing in stable areas when the power is cheap and where the geopolitical risk is minimum. That means that they don't have to move very often. So we are seeing the growth happening, let's say, in ERCOT or Texas area or PJM or Pennsylvania, Ohio area, which are like the cost of power is very low. The geopolitical risk is minimum. We see that also happening in Paraguay, Ethiopia, Argentina. So these are the areas where Bitcoin miners today, they're very, very advanced. They have their due diligence teams. They have the corporate development teams. They go do research. They sign agreements with governments. They manage the risk on every level that they can. So they used to have to move a lot and often, but now with them becoming more smart and more advanced, probably less and less often.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. How is energy empowering proof of work on the Bitcoin network?
So when you are doing proof of work, you're dealing with so many different disciplines, right? Energy is one aspect, but that's not the only one. Sourcing energy competitively, converting energy to hashes, by deploying the right infrastructure. So these are all very important aspects. With consumption of that energy comes a lot of heat. So you have to be able to manage it. You have to know a lot of thermodynamics. So when you are doing proof of work, you're actually doing a lot of physics and you are actually doing proof of work. So it's not an easy way of doing things. It's not just like locking this amount of asset in a contract and sitting and watching it, right? So that's a very tough business. And the guys who are doing it, they're actually doing proof of work.
Interesting. I guess they're very smart people.
They have become very smart. I mean, some of the smartest people across all industries I've worked in. So
interesting.
They are very, very smart for sure.
Yeah. Medi, what are your thoughts on quantum computing? I hear people talking about quantum computing is going to break the Bitcoin network and that's going to cause significant problems. What are your thoughts there?
So, quantum computing has been out there for decades, but the limitations there are that maintaining very cold temperatures and like maintaining all the infrastructure required to make that happen. As we are moving forward, we are hearing the news that like these big tech companies are coming up with the new type of hardware and new type of technology that is helping them to make that feasible in room temperature and in like day-to-day environments. However, I don't see that as a short-term risk for Bitcoin. Quantum computing could break Bitcoin from different angles. For example, the most possible one is breaking into a wallet that you know the address of the wallet, but you're looking for the private keys for the wallet. So that's the most possible risk. However, with the existing, let's say, type of quantum computers that are being announced by Microsoft or Google, you need, let's say, thousands of them. Let's say they probably what they've built is somewhere between like 100 to 1,000 qubits, but you actually need 13,000 to 100,000 qubits in order to be able to break into a wallet within a, let's say, reasonable time frame. Breaking into mining is more tough because you only have 10 minutes in order to come up with the right hash. So that's not, the risk is not as big for mining, but the risk for the actual like assets stored in wallets is a bit tougher. For mining, they anticipate that algorithms of quantum computing could improve the performance by around 50% over the next, let's say, 10 to 20 years.
So wouldn't the Bitcoin, if quantum computing comes into play, wouldn't Bitcoin miners start deploying quantum computing power? Or is that just way too expensive and far-reaching?
I think we will, for sure.
Okay.
Why not? I think that's going to happen. However, the biggest risk is how are we going to keep the network secure enough? And I know it's not going to happen overnight. Probably at the beginning, only the governments are going to be the ones who have access to quantum computers. And gradually that becomes a consumer type of product.
Right.
But from today until the day that it happens, we have to come up with ideas and tools and potentially network upgrades to make Bitcoin network more resilient against quantum computing. But I'm so excited about it. I mean, in Bitcoin, we've seen that miners could come up with an idea and deploy it, say, as a soft fork. So I think probably this should happen sometime down the road in order to make Bitcoin more quantum safe.
Amazing. That's fascinating. I mean, that's certainly going to be a more common conversation coming into the future.
Absolutely.
That's great. Medi, I appreciate that. As we wrap this up, Medi, where can we learn more about you? Where can we learn more about Lod and find information about the work that you're doing?
I'm very accessible on Twitter. I mean, they call it X these days, right? I still call it Twitter. And Telegram. But you can definitely find me on social media.
Great.
And please reach out. I would be happy to chat.
Excellent. Medi, I really appreciate the time that you've given me. I've personally learned quite a bit about a topic that I think is really important and fascinating. So I really appreciate you coming in today.
Thanks, Jared. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.